I'm a caretaker on Seguin Island. Final entry. The Portal Back Home. Written by NewUnknowns. All at once, the group gathered and ran towards the lighthouse. There were so many of us. Too many. Luckily, the demons were coming from the other end, so they weren't blocking our way through. They were picking up the pace, and they were catching up fast. "Hurry up, guys! Move it, they're flying!" Trunks yelled. The strap of his overalls bounced off his chest as he ran. "No, literally! They are flying!" He pointed upwards towards the sky behind us. I looked back and I saw two winged creatures flying in and out of the storm clouds. They had bony, sharp wings, and I could feel the gust of wind as they flapped in the air. They caught up to us fast, but kept flying ahead. "They're headed for the lighthouse. It's over. We don't stand a chance," Moira cried out. "Don't say that. We still have to try. We will figure something out," I told her. What we weren't going to do was just sit in that cave and wait to die. That I had determined. "I'm not going to give up. I don't run from anything. We keep going," I yelled. Moira turned to me in the chaos, all of us still moving. "Wolf, you've run for your entire life. It's how you ended up here," she said. It was true. My whole life up to this point had been me trying to escape my pain. I had wasted years running instead of facing my fears head on. "Well, not anymore. You'll see. We're going to get back home. You can thank me then over a glass of wine," I said as I winked at her and pushed on towards Trunks, who was in the front leading the way. "Hey, you gonna kick some ass for us, tough guy?" I asked him. He looked over his shoulder at me. "I'll get my fill, don't you worry. I just wonder if a washed-up old bruiser like you will be able to handle his own. Those white whiskers tell me that you're a little bit past your prime," Trunks said, laughing heartily. "I may not be young, but what I lack in youth I make up for in experience. I'll rack up a body count higher than you. You can count on it." "Let's save the testosterone for a ball game if we make it home," Moira said. We had just about made it to the mountain that would lead us up to the lighthouse when we saw the winged demons perched at the base, waiting for us. Trunks didn't stop running. "Hey, you scrawny pricks!" he yelled as he sprinted towards them, his heels puncturing the ground from the force. He grabbed one by the arm and pulled it to the side, forcing it to step forward. When it lost its balance, he pulled the beast sideways and stepped around its back. He latched his right arm around its jaw and pulled it taut, grabbing the bicep of his other arm. He pressed the side of his head into his left hand, which cupped the entirety of the demon's head, creating immense pressure. In a matter of seconds, I heard its jaw snapping clean off while Trunks wrestled it to the ground. He released its neck and grabbed each wing at its base. He tugged hard and ripped them right out of the creature's back. "Whoops, let me put those back up for you," Trunks said through gritted teeth. The ends of the wings looked like they were made of sharp bone. He plunged them back in, pinning it to the ground. Trunks then jumped back to his feet and stomped its skull, flattening it with a wet crunch. The other creature screamed and grabbed Trunks by the shoulders, its wings working feverishly to pull him up into the air. I ran over and I grabbed Trunks' ankles to keep him on the ground. Trunks then reached up and grabbed the demon's arms, tossing it over his head and crashing right into me. It clawed at my face as it came down, ripping open the side of my cheek. I grabbed its head and tried to snap its neck. When I twisted, it easily pulled loose. The head spun off and fell onto the ground. Its eyes were still watching me, and its body was still fighting. "They don't die!" Violet screamed as she ran to hide behind her father. Trunks ripped up one of the wings holding the other down and jammed it through the screecher's headless body. "Well, that's two for me. How many you got, Wolf?" Trunks asked rhetorically, and only slightly out of breath. I shook my head with a smirk before we all started our climb. It was maybe 200 yards up to the peak from the bottom. We were so close. I could see the swirling portal and the lens waiting for us. After only a few steps forward, the red glow of the island began to brighten. A shroud of something so huge started to consume the sky. It was a face. The face of the salesman. He was tremendous, his ghastly smile large enough to swallow the entire island. His needle-like teeth had ripped through his lips as they moved. The black, oil-like blood fell like rain. The island trembled at his words, again sounding as if he carried thousands of tortured souls inside of him.
"Trying to leave already?"
he asked.
"You just got here, Wolf. Why don't you stay a while?"
I froze, trying to rationalize his size. Violet yelled to me, trying to snap me back to reality. "Mister, don't stop! Keep running!" She was trying to pull me along, tugging on my arm as hard as she could. I had to make sure to stay brave for her.
Who should I pluck up first?" the salesman bellowed.
A large hand came swooping in towards us. He stuck a sharp claw into one of the people in our group, picked him up off the ground, and then tossed him into his mouth.
That one popped like a juicy grape,"
the salesman said. One by one, more of us were being eaten. People were screaming as they pushed through each other, trying to make it to the top. The army following us from the cave had caught up by now, picking off the stragglers and tearing them to shreds. The giant fat one on the leash ripped the axe from his chest and was swinging it through the crowd, while the white-haired man stood idly by, smiling in approval. "We're almost there, look," Violet said as she let go of my arm and sprung over to the ruined lighthouse. She then reached up, jumped, and wrapped her hands around the ledge of the one in the sky. The old Fresnel lens was swirling, beckoning us to escape. She pulled her legs over the railing and slid her body through. Violet went through the portal and then poked her head back out. "Come on!" she yelled. The salesman took a huge swipe at the back of the group, sending more than half of us flying off the mountain into the lava below. There were now only a few remaining, Moira being only inches from being rocketed away with the rest. He opened his mouth wide and took a giant bite right out of the mountain. His teeth tore through the black rock with ease. I could feel it crumbling beneath my feet as I scrambled to get to Violet. The salesman laughed wildly before he took another bite at the bottom of the mountain.
"Careful now, Wolf. We wouldn't want you to fall,"
he was taunting me.
"But if you do, I'll be ready to catch you."
His demonic laughter filled the air, louder than the rolling thunder. When I reached the peak, it was so close. I took a running jump and just barely managed to grab onto the railing. I pulled myself up with every ounce of strength that I had, and I hurled myself through the lens. "Ow!" Violet cried out as I landed right on top of her. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Are you okay?" I asked, trying to get back on my feet. She whined and pushed at my back. "Get off me, you're heavy." I managed to stand up and look for a way to turn on the light. I had no idea how the lens worked. I was never shown how, which should have occurred to me as strange back when Moira was showing me around the island. I guess I understand now why I wasn't. I started to inspect its workings and I saw that there was a reservoir for a few gallons of oil inside of the lamp. I lit the oil-soaked wick and the light slowly began to brighten. "Violet, let's get back," I yelled. The light burned so bright that we had to shield our eyes as we ran back through the illuminated portal. We came out and fell down onto the ledge of the ruined lighthouse. "You did it! It's tearing through, Moira yelled up to me. Finally, there was a light in the darkness. It was burning through hell, ripping a hole through the sky right next to me. I saw the island in its original form, all the greens and blues and beautiful white clouds. I started to feel the air around us being pulled back. We all had to remain steady, holding on to the railing. The salesman was taking a deep breath before exhaling a massive windstorm headed right for us. I watched as Violet's father was whisked away through the air, flying so far that he was merely a speck in the sky before completely disappearing out of sight. "No, Father!" Violet cried. Trunks screamed, "That's enough of this! No one else dies!" Trunks and Moira were hanging on. The wind died down, but the salesman was already taking another breath. "Moira, come on, I'll give you a boost," Trunks said, getting down on his knees. He held out his hands, ready to launch her by her feet up onto the ruined lighthouse ledge. Moira stepped into his hands and he hauled her up. She grabbed the railing and pulled herself over. I grabbed her hand and helped her up. Trunks was the last one to come up. The next gust of wind was much stronger than the last. When Trunks went to jump, it took him and swept him away. I watched him in slow motion, his arms and legs flailed in the sky, trying to fight the inevitable. He landed far out into the colors of orange and red, in the liquid fire that surrounded us. He sunk painfully slow. His screams were loud enough to be heard even over the salesman's laughter. "Trunks," Moira said under her breath as she leaned over the railing. She turned back to us, her body now slouched. Her eyes remained fixed on her feet. It was one more death because of her. "Thanks for everything, big guy. I'll always remember you," I whispered. I threw my arm around Moira and I turned to keep her moving. "We have to go. I'm sorry," I said. Violet jumped and pushed herself into the lighthouse in the sky one last time. I followed and then Moira. We stepped through the tear, the salesman's laughter echoing throughout his second hell. As we made our way completely through, the sounds faded, and then there was silence. I turned off the light in the tower, and the tear sealed. The fire that burned Seguin Island to the ground went down in the books as human error. We told the Coast Guard that during maintenance, the oil had spilled and set the top of the tower ablaze. I couldn't manage to contain the flames alone, and it took over faster than I could handle. I didn't carry my cell phone during my work, so I wasn't able to phone anything until it was too late. Moira and I have no guilt over this. We know that this was our only option. We couldn't, in good faith, have it any other way. As for Violet, Moira ended up adopting her. Her daughters were thrilled with the idea, and they have all gotten along just fine. After everything that Violet had been through, adjusting to the new time period hasn't been the strangest thing for her. As for me, I'm turning over a new leaf. I keep in touch with Moira often, and I even moved into an apartment within an hour of her in Vermont. It's beautiful here. I don't think that I'll ever leave. It's time to stop lying to myself. I want to work the same job, 50 hours a week, and hang out with the same friends every weekend. I'm done with the new. The people in your life are what makes life worth living. I only wish that I had learned that a little sooner, and that it didn't take all of this for me to figure that out. So, if you ever find yourself looking for a job on an island, well, don't do it. Keep your 9 to 5. Buy a house. Start a family instead. Trust me, You'll be glad you did.